Hello, hello. Welcome to Minds on Mushrooms. I'm your host, Maggie Kirkwood. Thank you so much for tuning in today. My guest, Robert Hildreth, he comes from North Carolina. I'm so thrilled to have him here today. He's going to talk about something that's kind of a new topic to Minds on Mushrooms, but he's going to get into the work he's been doing focusing around senior citizens, and psychedelics. I think this is such an awesome thing that you're doing, and I can't wait to dive right in. Thank you so much, Robert, for being here today. I appreciate your time.
Maggie, thank you so much for the invitation to come.
Yes, my pleasure. So let's, like I said, I kind of want to just dive right on in here, but I kind of wanted to start with, I believe off screen we were talking, you had mentioned you had a psychedelic experience or so in your teen years, but it took about 25 years or so later to have a more recent one. I think in 2017 or so, psychedelics kind of re-entered your life. Can you kind of kick us off there? And yeah.
No, thanks. So I guess it was about 1979 when I first had my first psychedelic experience, and I was in high school at the time, and I remember a friend of mine. We had been, using things like alcohol and cannabis, and I think by now I was a cigarette smoker, because it was something I guess we all did, back in the 70s and early 80s. And I remember when he pulled this thing out, it was like this little purple tab. It looked like a sweet tart almost or something. It was just this teeny tiny thing. And by that time we had done marijuana and I had done some Quaaludes and stuff like that. Those were kind of popular back in the day. And I told him, I said, there is no way this thing is going to get me high. And I could not have been, more wrong. I mean, I was literally just torn out of my frame. It was on a beach trip that we were at, and I'll never forget, being there underneath the pier, just sitting there in the sand with just feeling so connected, to the world and everything at that moment. And from there, I really knew that there was, like, everything was okay in the world. I felt different in such a way that it was so profound. And I think a lot of people will speak to this, that, you're really never the same, once you do that. And then LSD kind of became my drug of choice, I would say, in high school. We went to the concerts, doing it. I saw Van Halen in 1981 doing LSD one time. And,
Wow.
I was just sitting there watching like from the fifth row. It was all festival seating. So you're just standing there and I'm watching Eddie Van Halen just, rip some guitar solo. And I look back into the crowd and the crowd is just swaying, just really ever so slowly back and forth. And, I'll never forget that moment either. It's just one of these kind of pivotal times when it's just like the world is not really standing still, but it's in just a whole new dimension than anything, that I've ever seen before. Following that, since we're going down the LSD, my trials and tribulations with LSD, I was in a marriage sometime later. I want to say it was maybe 5 or 6 years later, and the marriage wasn't going very good. And we got some acid, my wife and I and some friends, and we took the acid. And it turned out, I don't think it was very pure. It was very clean or anything. We were in a bad place too. And this was sort of like the first experience I had with the set and setting, which is it's kind of common parlance in our space. And it was the worst time of my life. We got into a big fight. We went to a heavy metal show, and it was just this terrible, terrible experience that I had. I didn't sleep well that night, and I just pretty much wrote it off. At that point in time, I was like, okay, this is clearly not for me. Fast forward probably 25 years later, I was on a camping trip with some friends of mine, some older friends of mine, and one of the employees that I had at my job, he was a younger guy, and he was all into the dance scene, the EDM scene, and he would travel and go to festivals and go on the cruise ships where they have all the DJs and stuff like that. And he was talking about how they did acid and MDMA, or LSD and MDMA, and I just thought, I remember how good that was. I just loved acid LSD so much. And he said, well, I can get you some. And I'm like, well, okay. But I was a little bit nervous doing it. So anyway, I got I procured some LSD from this younger man. And we were traveling on kayaks down the French Broad River. And it was like a 3-night camping trip that we were on. And me and 3 of the other guys, we took a tab of the LSD that one morning before we set off on our boats. And I just remember being like halfway down the river and just, again, having that feeling come over me again, that everything is just perfect in the world, that I'm perfect as I am, that everything is just beautiful exactly as it is.
Mm.
And so I would say that was probably my introduction back into it. And from there, I feel like I've set a lot more intention around, the work with psychedelics, whether it's LSD, psilocybin, or things like MDMA. These are the medicines I kind of work with now. I do sit in ceremony. I sit in medicine circles now, and I've sat with ayahuasca and I've sat with San Pedro as well. And just by immersing myself in these new chemicals, as an older person, as somebody who's semi-retired and somebody who has got a lot of life and miles, I like to feel left in me, but also in the rearview mirror. I've just come to just appreciate them and respect them in a way that I didn't see possible, as a teenager when we were doing this. So it's just been a remarkable journey. And my work here now, and my hope is now that I can help other people who are, like my age, a little bit younger, a little bit older, who
Mm.
are interested in doing and healing things, whether it's in their lives or whether it's with their health
Mhm.
or just with their mental health or physical health. There's just so many opportunities, I feel like, with these substances, and they've been kind of given a bad rap over the last 30 years since they've been illegal. All of them are still in Schedule One status,
Right.
which, and there are some
Yes.
wonderful people who are working to change that. And hopefully it comes sooner than later.
Well, I applaud you and I applaud your work. I can see the passion and I live the passion with you. So thank you so much for, just getting out there and really continuing this conversation. Um, I appreciate you speaking about kind of like your vast differences with experience. You touched on how you've with LSD, you kind of witnessed firsthand a bad trip per se, due to set and setting. Um, but yeah, I want to know when you're talking to seniors or people who are kind of maybe interested, um, in their first experience, are you looking to work with them with psilocybin, LSD? Is it very individualized to each person, or how do you what do you find is kind of the best as an entry model for somebody, a senior, maybe first time experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of people come to this work and come to these experiences, either a little bit nervous or a little bit apprehensive. And in the case of seniors, they have additional issues, such as maybe they have health problems. I think I heard it said one time that the last 11 days of your life will be the most expensive medically of all the rest of your life. And so when
Mhm.
you get to a place in your life where maybe your health has been compromised, then it can be difficult to and a little bit scary to go into these things. This is your mind on mushrooms, right? I know you do a lot of work with people in the psilocybin space and mushrooms, and the beauty of mushrooms specifically is that they have a very low barrier to entry. A lot of people, maybe if you're on some medications and stuff like that, short of anti-anxiety medications, SSRIs, psilocybin is a great place to start with this. And another place that people often start is perhaps with ketamine or MDMA. MDMA is a little bit trickier for seniors, especially because it does have a little bit of a load on the heart, and a lot of times older people can have problems with their cardiovascular system, with hypertension, things like this. So, again, psilocybin is one of the ones that is a good entry point, I feel like, for people who are interested. And you're able to do them at super, super low doses, right? So you don't have to
Mhm.
just jump into a 3 gram to 5 gram high dose experience and not knowing what might come. You can start off in, say, the microdose realm of, what is it, like 10 to 20 micrograms or something like that.
Mhm.
There's also, you can move up slowly if you need to, like to a mini dose where it's maybe a half a gram to 3/4 of a gram or a gram. And so you can kind of feel your way into it. And
Mhm.
there's no real hurry for most people. It's okay to go slow and to spend and to take the time that you need and to figure this out. And also, as you're probably aware, and I think we maybe spoke earlier about, there's so many other there's so much accompanying work that can be done in the psychedelic work, whether it's journaling, whether it's physical things like yoga. I think it's important for people to kind of clear their mind and to be in a good place to start any type of practice with, psychedelics or with anything, right? I mean, if you go to the gym and you go and you just wear yourself out on the first 2 days, you're likely not going to come back again. But if you just, just do a bit of walking and do it every day, just do a little bit at a time. And so I feel like that's the beauty of that, especially in regard to psilocybin.
Yes.
LSD is a little bit of a different story. LSD is more, kind of in the head and more energetic and stuff like that. And I feel like it can be really good for people who, have depression and stuff like that. But again, with older people, it's always best to take a look at their mental health and their physical health with a little bit more of a microscope than you would say, an 18-year-old at Coachella.
Mm-hmm. I see. I think the longer I'm in this workspace and experimenting for myself, it really does come down to a practice for me. So I think, we know that medicine is just a tool, and it's on us to meet it halfway, but to really start embodying some of these changes, meditation or just time to yourself, really, sitting with yourself and going inward is such a huge component. That I think the more we can do that, the more it all kind of folds and weaves in together for benefit. I wanted to kind of touch base. So you have experience with MDMA, LSD. You've sat in ceremony for ayahuasca. How many ayahuasca journeys have you had?
I've had 6 ayahuasca journeys, in ceremony, and and we didn't really mention that. So now you're talking like the DMT world, and it feels like that. By some measures, there's like say ketamine and MDMA are like begin kind of start the process. That's something that ketamine is actually legal and can be taken in clinics and stuff like that. Then you kind of move up the ladder to escalates up to psilocybin, and then the ranges of psilocybin and LSD may kind of be in that category too. But then once you get into the DMT world, I really do feel like that's kind of a place for experienced people like yourself or me. We've got a lot of medicine experience, and so and I love the word you said, practice. I really do believe that these medicines are a practice, just like something that you mentioned, meditation, just sitting with yourself and stuff like that. There's something specifically that psilocybin does. It has a way of kind of clearing the ruts in your thinking system and your thinking patterns. And for a lot of people, especially older people, they can sometimes ruminate in really bad thoughts. There's a lot of worries people have about, do I have enough money to live for the rest of my life on? What kind of health do I have? What kind of, am I going to have to continue working? There's all kinds of problems that, that older people can have. And it really helps to kind of turn the noise down on that. And by developing the practices, meditation, just sitting with yourself, being compassionate towards yourself. A lot of times, older people have worked careers and stuff like that. And one of the biggest regrets that you hear from seniors is that they didn't live the life that they wanted to live. They lived the life that they thought was expected of them. And, you can't go back and change the past or anything, but you can, start with where you are, right? And as long as you're on this side of the grave, there is something you can do, to help improve your life. And whether it's, improving relationships with your family, for having increased better relationships with your friends. And to your point, just that's key, Maggie. I can't, say enough about that. Having a good sense of yourself and creating that, especially before you go into the deeper type journeys. But ayahuasca is one of that was a fantastic one for me. Just a brief experience I had. I think it was like maybe the 3rd ceremony that I did. I had what I can only call like a near death experience. I was laying down on my mat, and we had drank about 30 minutes before. And as you may know, the ayahuasqueros, then the shamans come in and they serve the medicine, and then they wait about 30 minutes for the medicine to start kicking in. And then they start singing the Icaros. And the minute the second Icaros is sung, it activates the molecule somehow, some way. I can't speak to the mysticism of it, but it is definitely there. And as soon as they started singing in this particular ceremony, I felt my body just levitating off my mat, and I felt myself ascending into what I can only call, and the word that I used was heaven. I could feel my body ascending into heaven. Now,
Mm.
I'm primarily agnostic, and so, but I'm a Methodist by trade, by birth, and so this is the language that I have, and so, and as I was rising up into it, and as I was ascending into heaven, I had this moment where I stopped, my body stopped, and I said, "No, I'm not ascending into heaven. Heaven is raining down and ascending onto me," and
Oh, wow.
at that moment, I just had the most beautiful sort of like recognition that if this is when I go, this is perfectly fine. I'm
Mm.
ready. I could surrender. I could surrender right now. So I would say that was a really profound experience I had on that. And and
Mm.
again, it was something I would lay it up there with one of the peak experiences, of my life and of my psychedelic experience. So,
Wow.
but again, that's at the top.
Yes,
Did I
I
answer
think,
your question? I forgot the question.
perhaps I should have rephrased my question. I like to look at psychedelics. We've got ayahuasca, which is grandmother, so at the top of the pyramid. And then I look at psilocybin, like the children, where we can play and ask questions, a little bit of a lighter, um, well, you can start real light. I guess I should have asked, did you feel a calling at some point, after some of your other psychedelic experiences to go and sit with grandmother?
Yeah, I would say that, this to me, that sort of represented like, I love your metaphor, right? It kind of represented like the apex or the pinnacle, of the psychedelics that I had done before. And there was something too, excuse me, about going into the jungle and doing it in such a setting, in such a ceremonial and ritual setting, that I thought it would just be just a remarkable experience. And I can say, without a doubt, it did not disappoint. I was a little bit anxious about it, to be sure. I was listening to the Universe Within podcast, and the host of that podcast had mentioned the Temple of the Way of Light, which was the facility that I went to, and it was just really wonderful for me. It wasn't really expensive or bougie, it wasn't really like at a resort area, some of the places that you see and a lot of celebrities go to and stuff like that. They have no electricity, there's no cell service or anything like that, and I was down there for 11 days, and I got to say, I'd be lying if I didn't say I was not super nervous about it. This is the first time I had really sat, in the jungle, in the darkness, with medicine that I had never worked with before. But it turned out my experience was just completely lovely. And I feel like, part of what made that experience, as good, it was the medicine is a key part of it. But also, and we'll touch on this, it's about the community. When
Mm.
you go into a ceremonial setting with a group of individuals, like-minded individuals who are seekers, as well. They're there. They're there for different things than you, but kind of for the same thing that you are, to make their lives whole, maybe to improve their relationships with others, maybe to remove some of the burdens and just bad things they have going on in their life. And it was just the people there were just magnificent. They were all so
Mm.
kind, and being in that space with people, I think that's where a lot of the magic comes with these psychedelics. It's the medicines themselves have a lot to really to bring in at that intense moment of the ceremony, right? Whether it's the
Mm.
6 hours of the ayahuasca or the psilocybin, or the 10 or 12 hours of the LSD, which can sometimes be a little bit long. I mean, I think we've all had an
Right.
experience with LSD where we're like, okay, I'm ready for this to be done now. And, you just have to kind of, that part of it is kind of riding it all out.
Yeah.
But again, being
Well,
with being with everyone, and then just having communal meals with everybody, sitting with people that
mm,
you've never met before, and just really learning about them. There's a connection that really happens, and this is something that is kind of unique in the sense that it's outside of your family, outside of your normal friend group and stuff like that. So it was just a
yeah,
beautiful experience.
absolutely. And what a beautiful segue. Robert and I actually met a few weeks back. We were both participating. Well, you were facilitating a little bit more, in a psilocybin practitioner training program.
That is correct.
In Yes, down in Costa Rica. And for me, it was my first ceremony experience. So everything that you just stated, about people coming together, the dynamic changes. It's intensified, and considering all of the elements as well. We're in the jungle. There's live music and instruments being played. And yeah, I can't say enough about what a shift of energy, all the elements coming together just really makes the experience or ceremony so much more profound than an individual session per se. Um, yeah, I kind of just wanted to touch base on our experience in Costa Rica. You were kind of coming back to facilitate. So yeah, remind me, you were there. Did you get to participate? I
I
was
did. I
lost
did
in my own journey.
participate. Yeah, I did. I did participate, and that's I love everything you said there about the ceremonial experience and the communal experience, which is just amazing. It's fascinating how there's like in the center of our ceremony we had an altar, right, and everybody brought things. There was actually part of the ceremony where everybody brought things to the altar, whether they brought them with them, whether it was something that they found around the retreat center and everything like that. And everything that we do there has like a purpose, right? So to bring these objects and to share what that object means to you, in the circle, with other people. And I feel like there's something that happens, in circles like that. So part of the work I do here in Charlotte, North Carolina, is I sit at a lot of men's groups, and I kind of help
Mm,
host some of those from time to time. And there's something that's really remarkable in both the speaking in circles like that and the listening in circles like that. Like if I bring something up, and it means something to me, and I place it on the altar and share, with the community about that, it never fails to trigger something, in somebody else. And so in the listening, I need to be in the same way. I need to be listening. Maggie's bringing something here. It's maybe a feather or something she found and what it represents to her. Maybe it's a childhood memory. Maybe it's a childhood wound. Who knows what it might be. But to be able to kind of take that on for myself and to be able to hold that, with you, in the community, it's just an amazing experience. And of course, I'll just speak briefly. So I actually sat in with the medicine on the first night that we were there, the first of the 2 nights we were there able to do it. And I don't know if you remember or not, I know you were in ceremony that night too, but when the ceremony ended and we all went to the kitchen and, kind of just communed and had snacks and, had some fruit, fruit after a ceremony is just such a
mm.
delicious, thing to just have that mango, in your mouth, or the melon. It's just, and everybody is just, still kind of in the experience, but maybe not, starting to kind of wane, you're on the back side of it. And there was just, as I remember, just this beautiful community of laughter. So all this is to say around the communal aspect of it. I feel like, as we talk about, integration is one of the key parts to the successful use of psychedelics, and integrating, what we discover in these non-ordinary states of consciousness, how we weave them into our own life. And I feel like that, the sort of like the celebration of moving from ceremony into the communal space, it's almost like the beginning of the integration. You're sharing the stories as they're just still just really raw and just present, in your mind and everything. Before you have a chance to start journaling about things, or, sleeping and thinking about some things like that. And so I just don't think enough can be said about, the communities. And these happen from the time we're kids, right? Even when we're in like kindergarten or something like that, we're starting to form these bonds. And in the case of especially of elderly people, of older people, I feel like that it's important that we don't lose these communities. And sometimes we have to go to like people that are not, quite as old as us and stuff. Like I would say, I wasn't the oldest person, in ceremony. I don't feel like on this particular trip, but I was up there, and so I feel like it's important sometimes to, as an elder, to sometimes reach down for mentors, right? Like, the work that you're doing here, this is something that, I consider you to be, a mentor of mine, sort of de facto, in the sense that, you're someone who I can relate to and who's working in the space. And, you're obviously younger than I am. You have a different experience on life than I do, as I understand you're a mother. And so you have the trials and tribulations, that go along with all that. And that's all just beautiful information and story for me to sort of weave into my own story and kind of build on myself, as an elder kind of going forward, particularly with younger people and with older people as well.
Mm, I love that. Yeah, it was just such a fantastic opportunity to be surrounded with people that are passionate and like-minded on all of the things. I think that kind of segues. I wanted to get back to talking about working with seniors. Let's talk about what sorts of, are people coming to you? Are they newly retired? Are they trying to expand kind of their social life? What types of people are you working with, and who do you feel um, are benefiting working with psilocybin and other medicines, I
Yeah.
suppose?
Yeah, I think primarily the people that I'm working with is men, and this may just be kind of like de facto to sort of like my, as a man, I sort of understand that world a little bit better, and I do a lot of men's work, and so I'm finding more people from that space. And what I'm finding is that a lot of men, that are my age and maybe a little bit older, who are moving into their retirement years, are really not sure about what they want to do next. When you're younger in your life, you kind of know that, okay, I'm going to go to college, or I'm going to go to work, or I'm going to get married, I'm going to raise this family, something like that. But a lot of times, now that we're living longer, we don't really there's not really a clear path out. Not all of us have, millions of dollars in stocks, and we like to play golf, and, and even those people, I think, that kind of becomes a little bit, tiring to them as well. And so, being able to kind of create meaning in your life that is something that you maybe haven't discovered yet, or something like that. A lot of people have heard about psychedelics. I'm sure you've heard about Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. I think recently Oprah Winfrey has come out, and has given some accolades to psychedelics. So, more men are entering the conversation for sure. And I actually, I sit in men's circles, and where we actually do some ceremonies. I've got a trip coming up with some younger men where we're actually going to Cumberland Island in Georgia, and we're going to be, sitting with some medicine there in like a very forested, kind of area. So,
Wow.
there's so much place, there's so many beautiful places in the world, and especially in this country for people to sit contemplatively and to use these medicines in a sense that's not, I feel like there's a couple different ways to use them. There's sort of like the microdosing and maybe the learning component of it. There's like a recreational part where maybe we are at Coachella or we are at Burning Man, and we're kind of engaging in like a big broad community that's very celebratory and such like that. And then there's the more spiritual context, which I would say I would put the work that we did in Costa Rica, in that category. And to me, they all have value. Part of the push to get these medicines legalized and in the mainstream, it's going to have to come under the guise of some kind of medical benefit, right? Part of Schedule One criteria is that this medicine has no use in for medicine or something like that. But you and I and the millions of us who are experiencing this, know that that's just kind of a misguided sort of rule around that or parameter around that. So if we can free ourselves from that, that would be very beneficial. And again, a lot of these men, in fact, I'm working with a gentleman now who's just wanting to shake off some of the fog of his life. He's kind of spiraled into like a bad way of thinking about the world and a bad way of thinking about his family and the people that are in it and such like that. And it's going to take a while, and it won't be just one big medicine journey that that heals him of this, right? I mean, these are these medicines are kind of accoutrements to other practices, as you mentioned before, sitting with your thoughts, meditation, yoga, journaling, and just and putting yourself out more in communities like that. So that's primarily it's been men. Now I do want to move into the space of people who are who have like terminal diseases and are at the last stages of their life, and they're scared about dying. And one thing I've sat with people who have died before, and if there's one thing that people, even people who are deeply religious, a lot of times they're not sure. They kind of like start checking it, pumping the brakes a little bit, as they're getting towards the end. And I haven't really resolved this altogether because I still need to work with more people who are, in hospice situations and stuff like that, who, have other conditions around them. They may have family members who would object to this type of treatment and stuff like that. So there's a lot of hurdles there that are, again, I'm just now starting to navigate. And, I hope I have a long kind of twilight career in this to work with more people like that and to help people cross the other side, because we're all going there. There's a famous painting. I forget it. I think it's a Hindu painting, and it's like the circle of life. And on one side of it, I'll send you a picture of it if you want to post it or put it in the notes or something like that. But on one side of it, you have the child who's coming out and emerging from the female, and the child grows up, and then it becomes the man, and then the man slowly collapses into himself and becomes old and goes back into death. And this is like the circle of life. And I don't know what I'm going to feel like when I get there. I feel like my experience with ayahuasca that night, I get some comfort and having that, what I would just call a death experience. But, I can imagine it's pretty scary there at the end, and now that we have medicine that can tell us you have heart disease and you have this long to live, or you have cancers and this is your prognosis and stuff like that, that can be very heavy and very defeating for a lot of people. And, even those people, they just have a new curriculum in their life right now. They're no longer, fathers and workers and stuff like that. They're people who are at the end. And so, my hope is, and my prayer is that I can, help people more like that going forward as I cultivate myself and this work.
I love that. I think just personally speaking, psilocybin has really, really helped me to understand and feel more comfortable with the concept of death. Obviously, it is the pretty much one and only for sure given in our lifetimes. But just the whole idea of death and rebirth is constantly happening, and in our daily lives, and just as we progress. And I love the idea of working with people, helping them to feel more ease towards end of life. And I think that this medicine has such a beautiful way to it's almost ineffable, hard to explain, but it's just, again, that overall feeling you touched on with some of your first experiences of everything is okay, everything is perfect, I have what I need, we are one. It's I think it's that part that that is so special and so hard to express. But wonderful to hear that you're open to working with people in that capacity. I think it's such a needed space, or people need space for that, to help ease some of these anxieties. Um, I was also curious. So, can you talk? I hope you don't mind. I really like to learn more about people's personal experiences. When with your experience with MDMA, have you felt that has helped you in a healing, cathartic way? Is it? I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on working with that medicine for yourself, and if that's one that you're entertaining, or people are coming to you wanting to know more about. Just kind of talking about the differences. I think we've covered LSD and psilocybin, but yeah, I just wanted to touch base on MDMA real quick.
Yeah, I think MDMA. There's many books out there, and I could recommend some to you. But there's so much to be said about it as like a heart opening sort of medication, and the way that it seems to, without the psychedelic effects of, say, psilocybin or DMT or LSD, it's able to really calm the amygdala down. The amygdala being like the primal part of your brain that's always looking for trouble. It's like the fireman. It's looking for any little thing that is going wrong in your space, and making you aware of it and activating your body in a way that it can be kind of defensive to whatever that's going on. There's a great book, de Kolk, I think, is the man who writes it. It's called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's about how trauma that we have, especially when we're younger, tends to stay with us, and it lives in our body. And when we're activated by that trauma, or even just the thought of it or something related to it, even though it's not that trauma per se, it really activates the body and has a deep impact on our cortisol and the way that we feel about ourselves. And this can be and we can color the whole world with that sort of that feeling and that traumatic experience. And so this is just kind of a higher view that I'm sure Andrew Huberman could describe it, way better than I'm describing, what it does. But by calming that part down and opening up like the frontal cortex and having, more communication and having sort of like a softer stance on whatever that trauma was. And this is where I think MDMA is having such success with people with PTSD. It's allowing them, not to just cover the massive symptoms of the trauma that they experience, but it allows them to go inside of it and look at it through a more clear and soft lens, not a lens that has the story about, this was terrible when I, saw my buddies in combat, killed or dying, or when, my father beat me when I was a kid, or something like that. And so, from my experience with it, and I don't really have a lot of that trauma, but I noticed that, when I first started using it, just how how, again, connected I felt in the world, and how much I was able to just really kind of love myself. How much, I didn't, as you get older, like you look in the mirror and, I expect to see this 21-year-old, this hotshot kid that I feel like I used to be, back in the day, where he's like, oh, this guy, he's got everything going on. He's wonderful. He does his job and he does all this. And now, my face is kind of melting in a way, and I wake up in the morning and go to the bathroom and my feet are like shuffling on the floor, and I just don't have like the energy to lift them up. I don't feel like, but it allows people to, to go in deeper and to really unravel some of these stories that they've had about themselves in a really quick way. Now, I feel like, any of these, there's a lot of talk about how things, you can reach these states, through meditation and with breath work and such like that. And I believe that those are great modalities of connecting with yourself and softening around yourself in some ways. But there's something about the psychedelics, the way they act so fast, and you don't have to have this 3 years of meditation experience or 5 years of journaling or whatever it is that you've done. So it allows people who, it is kind of a shortcut in a way, I guess you might say. And this of course is more of a therapeutic way of thinking, right? Because I've also done MDMA recreationally, and there's just something amazing about being at Burning Man on the playa at sunset, with your role coming up. I mean, it really is fantastic. So that's kind of like my experience with it. I haven't used it a lot with people, although I do feel like it has a very high potential, for connecting people to themselves, and also, with couples and relationships and stuff like that. I know a lot of couples who they work with it, even older couples who are in pretty good health. You need to have, at least a certain level of robustness in your health. It's not a lot. Again, it's very non-toxic in the sense that, psilocybin and LSD are as well, but it can elevate the heart rate and stuff like that. And so you have to kind of be a little bit aware of that. But, I do know couples personally who will go and use MDMA maybe a couple times a year just to kind of reconnect with intention, maybe bring, some things to the relationship that they're having a hard time talking about, at that moment. Just these little things, just the little things that kind of get under your skin about the person or something like that. And it's just a great place to be heard and to speak, your truth in that moment without being activated and defensive and such like that. So I feel like it has a tremendous amount of potential with couples, and with individuals as well. And they're learning now that, MAPS is an organization that does a lot of work, MAPS and Lycos. I don't really know how they're still connected some way, but there's some distinction of those groups now. But, Rick Doblin is even talking about using MDMA with kids who have gone through trauma, because the story now is the closer you can get the treatment to the trauma, like instead of trying to treat a woman who's 50 years old and who has a lot of trauma from when she was a teenager, if you can bring that closer to that timeline, you can heal it faster, and then you can have better outcomes, for people's lives like that. So I'm a huge advocate of it. I am, again, I'm walking a little bit gingerly with it, at the moment. I mean, if I'm with somebody and I know that they're, fairly robust, healthy, then that's going to be fine. And just something else to kind of mention, I spoke to the component of this in a lot of cases, and a lot of seniors are on medication and such. There are organizations like the Spirit Pharmacist specifically who can talk with you. You can go online, and again, they're doctors, but they're not like working in a professional capacity, and they can help advise people who are, maybe they're on a lot of medications, or maybe they've got a lot in their past in their health that they're concerned about. And there's a lot of good work going on with people who can actually talk to you about that. And, and this is going to be something that artificial intelligence is going to be able to help us with as well going forward. It's just a fantastic tool where you can go in yourself, put in your medications, put in your conditions and stuff like that. Maybe you could feed it information about your blood panels or some work that you've had done, and it can kind of give you, some kind of idea of whether or not you could be a candidate for any of this. But yes. MDMA.
Well, thank you. Yes, I really appreciate your commentary around it. I am a fan as well. I think you said it so beautifully. For me, when you look at couples and people who are having to have hard conversations, it is such a beautiful, gentle way to just kind of open that soul. Be careful not to overshare. No, I really do appreciate just having conversation around. There are a few medicines that we're mentioning, and I think just to recap, uh, yes, obviously you have to be very responsible with all of the medications, and take a look at what if you have prescriptions to some pharma meds, they play and can play differently into psilocybin or MDMA versus psilocybin, for example. So thanks for mentioning that. Um, so we mentioned we're going to be connecting quite a few links. I want to have people to be able to have access to your website to check out some of your offerings and learn more about you. And then, can you mention the name? Is it Spiritual Pharmacist, where people can take a look?
Yeah. Okay. The Spirit Pharmacist is Ben Malcolm's
Spirit
site, and
Pharmacist.
that's where you can go. Spirit Pharmacist, and that is where they do a lot of work with contraindications, and you can bring your concerns, you can set an appointment with them, and you can actually auger in really specifically to what your circumstances are and such like that. My website is seniorsonpsychedelics.life. That's seniorsonpsychedelics.life. And I'm also on Instagram as well, Robert Hildreth. That's not, just leave the TH off, Robert Hildreth on Instagram. Apparently, there's more Robert Hildreths than one in this world. I had no idea,
Of course.
Go figure.
Well, just to be sure, I will link both of those in the episode description. Let's see here. So you said you've got a trip coming up with some younger gentlemen. Do you have any other psychedelic related things you're looking forward to? Or is that kind of just on radar?
Yeah. Well, I have, so personally, I have there's a wachuma or San Pedro ceremony that I'll be attending in the Asheville area. Asheville is the mountain area near North Carolina. It's kind of like the cooler part of North Carolina. Charlotte is one of the big kind of growing boom towns and stuff like that. And, one of my goals and something I really kind of hope to do going forward is to be able to kind of bridge, there's a real spiritual community, and these are, largely like younger people who are into a lot of, I don't want to say this word condescendingly or anything like that, but that are kind of deeper into the woo-woo world of psychedelics and spirituality and stuff like that. And I, just to be clear, I can really swim in those waters too, and I love doing that. But I want to try to hopefully be more of a bridge to people who missed that. And again, working with seniors, there's a lot of those people who are not as familiar with it, right? I don't want to say that they don't know anything about it, but I'd like to hopefully be a little bit of a bridge to that, and sort of create more of a welcoming environment, for people who don't have a lot of experience with that, and who maybe kind of, turn a little bit, maybe they would normally be turned off if you just drop into the conversation about, malocas and ayahuasca and curanderos and dietas and wachuma and, all the kind of words. So, that's kind of something I'm wanting to do. Try to bring, act like almost as a translator or sort of a go-between between, the jungles of Peru and the city streets of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Well, there you go. How exciting. I am also a huge fan of wachuma. I feel that it is for me, such a beautiful, gentle medicine, very positive experience the 2 times I've sat with it. That were just profound and all filled with bliss and light. Is this going to be, you've had it before, this is just another experience for you?
Yeah, I've sat with wachuma probably 6 times now, and I love what you said about that. Thank you for bringing that up, because we could have easily skipped over wachuma. I feel like that is kind of becoming one of my favorite psychedelics, in the sense that it's not. It's a little bit hard to go over the line. I mean, I have purged before, using too much of it or something like that. But overall, it does not have that. It still has that psychedelic presence, but it doesn't have that overwhelming presence of, say, something that psilocybin could have or DMT could have. In situations, especially when you're in ceremony. So that, again, that's another one. And thank you for bringing this up. And I'm friends with the gentleman who actually holds these ceremonies. And I'm going to bring this up next time I speak to him. Where does this fit, with, the older population? I will say that, in these circles, I have seen, people in their 70s, routinely come and sit, with wachuma. And so I feel like that it's probably a pretty good place to start. And then it also gets people in that communal space. I've never done it just alone or anything. It's always been, in a medicine circle. And
Likewise.
again, I can't speak enough, to the medicine circles, to be in the space where, you're with people and you're there with intention and you're sitting, with medicine in a space that's just so, the container of the space, which is really critical to that. I feel like the container we had in Costa Rica was just beautiful, with the music and, with that, and everybody there in the space, which is just this beautiful space made of all natural materials and stuff like that. It's just, again, can't say enough about it. And I feel like, everyone should be a part of that, even if it's, and I'll even advocate for, if you don't do medicine at all, sitting in men's circles, sitting in a recovery circle, it's the same thing. There's a reason that recovery work and like AA, NA and stuff like that, there's a reason they work, and it all has to do with, the community and everybody coming there and being open and sharing. And again, these medicines just, add, more of a vehicle to sort of enhance that or speed that process up a little bit, or give people more to go home with when they're with themselves, and to bring it forth in their work with their families and, at work as well. I mean, it's just amazing, to go back into a community that I kind of had one opinion on, like my work community or something like that, and then be able to relate to people differently and more openly and kindly, and, to ask questions and to listen. These things really are powerful. They don't just, it's not just in the circle, we take it with us wherever we go.
Absolutely. I appreciate that statement so much. And again, I just really appreciate your passion for wanting to share your knowledge and experiences and to help other people feel the same way. That's a big part of it for me, is I just want others to feel this overwhelming sense of bliss at times. And
Yeah, absolutely.
it's a never ending journey. It's a never ending conversation. I've so appreciated having you here with me today. And I look forward to keeping in touch with you and hearing about the people that you're helping and your experiences coming up. I hope you have some great journeys and continue to keep meeting just amazing people along the way. And it's good to see you. I'm still recovering, coming back from Costa Rica. Have you landed back nicely?
The plane has landed, and it's and again, this work is always continually working with me. And I want to just thank you so much for this invitation. I can't say enough about this. I love your work. I've watched your podcast, and I'm going to continue to do so. I really do appreciate that, and I want to get together next time I'm in the Twin Cities area. I'm coming to your place, and I want to sit in that groovy space that you've got with your background there. That is just amazing, amazing, amazing.
Well, thank you, Robert. You'll be invited. Let me know when you hit up the Twin Cities. We'll make it happen.
Thank you, Maggie. It's a beautiful space.
Thank you. Appreciate you. And let's keep in touch. And thank you, listeners, so much for tuning in. Your support means more than you know. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you for joining the journey. You can tune in to Minds on Mushrooms on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.